Hey guys, it's Miss Keenum, and we are going to talk about comparing fractions. This is the first part of a three-part video series on comparing fractions, and part one is on comparing fractions using benchmark fractions. Benchmark fractions would be numbers such as 0, a half, and 1. Before we can really talk about comparing fractions, we first have to make sure we know what fractions are. So fractions make up a whole. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, there is a pizza. And you can see from that pizza that 3 pieces of pizza are remaining and 1 piece is missing. So to make up the whole pizza, I would need 4 pieces or 4 slices of pizza. Each slice is a fraction of the pizza. So I have 3 slices of the 4 remaining. So that fraction would be 3/4. And I have 1 slice of the 4-slice pizza missing. So that fraction would be 1/4. When we write a fraction such as 3/4, we write it as 3/4. The 3, or the top number, is considered the numerator, and the bottom number is the denominator. Okay, so let's compare the fractions 3/6 and 4/5. I want to know which fraction is larger and smaller, or which fraction is larger, which fraction is smaller, or are they equal? So to do that, I'm going to look at the benchmark fractions 0, a half, and 1. And I'm going to place these numbers on a number line just so they're easier to see. Okay, so let's look at our first fraction, 3/6. So as we just said, our bottom number, which is called the denominator, determines how many slices of the pizza, or how many slices of the pie, or how many parts of the whole that we have. So we can compare the number 3/6 to the number 0, a half, and 1. We can never have a fraction that is greater than 1 because 1 makes up the whole. So when we're looking at that, I can say that to equal the number 1, I'm going to have 6 slices on the bottom. That makes up my whole, shown up here. And then I have 6 slices also on top. So that gives me a whole. 6/6 is 1 in this case. So likewise, 0, you put your 6 on bottom, and I put my 6 on bottom because that's the fraction that I have right here for 3/6. Okay, so then I'm going to put a 0 on top because 0 over any number gives me 0. And then like I said down here at the bottom, the whole over the whole gives me 1. Okay, so to find my half, once again, I'm going to place 6 on bottom because that's my denominator in the 3/6 fraction given. And then I'm going to determine what's half of 6. So I know that half of 6 is 3. So I know that 3/6 and 1/2 are equal. That's the same number. So 3/6 in this case was the fraction originally given. So I can go ahead and I can mark that on my number line at the halfway point. Okay, now I'm going to look at the fraction given that was 4/5. Okay, so we're going to go through the same process we just went through. So I have 0, a half, and 1. Okay, so 0, remember, is going to be 0 over any number. And in this case, my bottom number is going to be 5 because that's the denominator, or the bottom number in the fraction given. And I know that to make a 1, I'm going to have 5 on bottom, and I'm going to have 5 on top. 5/5 gives me 1, or the whole over the whole gives me 1. Okay, so my number 4/5 right here is obviously somewhere between 0/5 and 5/5. But is it closer to 0/5 or is it closer to 5/5? By looking at this number, you can probably conclude that yes, 4/5 is closer to 5/5. But do I know, is it more than a half or is it less than a half? And you may be able to figure that out in your head, but if not, we're going to go through this exercise. So we're going to draw our fraction and we're going to write our 5 on bottom because that's the whole part, or the denominator part, that we have of our pie or our pizza, we have 5 parts. Our pie's cut into 5 parts. Okay, so half of 5 is 2.5. Now, I'm kind of hesitant to write this right here because you would not see a fraction written as 2.5 over 5. But it's going to help you understand how you can determine what half of a fifth of something that's divided into fives, what half of that is. And that would be 2.5 slices out of 5 slices would be half. So when I'm comparing my 4/5 to these three numbers, I can tell that 4/5 falls somewhere between the 2.5 over 5 and the 5 over 5. Or how we would really write that as a half and 1. So 4/5 falls somewhere between a half and 1. And we know that, yes, it actually falls a little bit closer to 1 than it does to a half. So this dot right here represents the fraction 4/5. And the green dot represents the fraction 3/6. So I can write that 3/6 is less than 4/5. And if I wanted to see that visually or graphically, it would look like this. So I have a pie chart or a pie, and I've divided it into 6 pieces. And then I've colored in 3 of those 6 pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3 of those pieces are colored in, which is representing half of my pie. Then over here, the same size pie is divided into 5 pieces. And I have 4 of those pieces colored in because my fraction is 4/5. And I can see that the colored in pieces of the 4/5 pie takes up more room than the colored pieces of the 3/6 pie. Okay, so now we're ready for the last problem, and this is a word problem, and it reads, there are 2 cakes on the counter that are the same size. The first cake has 1/2 of it left. The second cake has 5/12 left. Which cake has more left? So I'm comparing the numbers or the fractions 1/2 to 5/12 because that's how much is left of each of the cakes we're comparing. Okay, so let's look at our benchmark fractions, and we have a 0, 1/2, and 1. Okay, and then I have the fraction 1/2, which I don't really have to do anything with because 1/2 is one of our benchmark fractions. So I can go ahead and I can color that one in on my number line. Now I'm going to look at the fraction 5/12. 5/12. And so I can look and I can say, well, 0 equals 0 over 12. So 5/12 is clearly larger than 0/12, or it's larger than 0. And then I have a 1/2, which equals 6/12. Well, I can see that my 5/12 falls somewhere between my 0 and my 1/2. And it's honestly going to be a little bit closer to the 1/2, the 6/12, than it is going to be to my 0. So by looking at this, I know that 5/12 is less than 1/2. So I know that my cake with 1/2 of it remaining is the cake with the most left. So the first cake has the most left. Once again, to look at this graphically, I have a cake, and it's the same size cake. On the left-hand side, that cake is divided into 2s, and 1/2 of that's colored in, or one of those slices is colored in to represent a 1/2. On the right, that same size cake is divided into 12 pieces, and 5 of those are colored in. The colored in pieces represent how many pieces are remaining. Looking at these pictures, you can tell that the cake with 1/2 of it remaining has more than the cake with only 5/12 remaining. Thanks for listening today, and in the future, we'll come back with videos 2 and 3 on comparing fractions.